All right. So, hi, everybody. I wanted to get an idea of some of the, I always like to use real situations if I can. So I was hoping that you guys would type a little bit into the chat box about what kind of things that you want to communicate up about. What are the skills that would help you communicate up? So it's kind of two questions, like if you're willing to share, like if you're not comfortable, that's obvious, always okay. But what kinds of things are you wanting to communicate up about? And what are some of the skills that you think would help you communicate up? And that's what we're looking for. I've got to find my Zoom controls. All right, so I'm hoping to see some stuff in the chat box. And Christine, if there's stuff there and I'm not seeing it, can you, I don't see anything there. All right. Now we got some stuff coming in. So communicating about potentially valuable training initiatives for management and leadership to take on. Tact, that's great. So I'm going to call that need for training about something, and we'll be able to use these as examples later on. So who else has got something they want to communicate up about? Communicate with grace in a fast-changing environment. How to express issues or concerns in a way that will be received well. Sure, of course. Yep. Try to learn about the art of communicating up the chain. And Robert, I'm hoping you'll probably have some things to offer around that, because you've probably been a master at that, I'm guessing. Communicate about overall changes within the library due to changing times. And I love that, Robert Ann, about the explaining thoroughly so people are open to ideas. Okay. Anybody else? And again, by the way, I just want to be super clear. I have a pretty high expectation of involvement in this, so you'll probably need to pay attention. All right. Communicating on the lack of number of team members on a team project, communicating the vital need for anti-racism work in the libraries, training ideas for all staff. Okay, and I'll just give another kind of minute for that to keep that, and I'm writing down the list. Communicate through redirection of bringing you back to the overall goal without sounding preachy. I like that. Communicating the need for open avenues of communication. I love it. All right. To help advocate for staff. Great. Okay, and I'm going to ask you to switch. In fact, let's do this verbally, because I think I can capture it. And so what are some of the skills you think you would like to have to communicate up? I realize it might take a moment to think about, but what are some of the skills you feel like you need and wish you had that would help you communicate up?
I feel like comfort with not necessarily public speaking, but kind of public speaking. I feel like I'm somebody who tends to get nervous. And so I either talk too quickly or just, come off with a disposition of nerves, and that doesn't help what I'm trying to communicate come across.
Sure. Right. Great. Thank you. What else? Yeah, and everyone can just speak up.
I think similar to Amanda, being able to articulate clearly what I'm thinking.
Okay, great. Who
I
else?
think being able to navigate kind of the politics or networks within a system and how to do that.
Okay, great. What else?
Maybe like feeling confident not to just like communicate the idea, but then also to expect follow-up and request like action coming from that idea, not just listening, and like so to follow up on it.
I was thinking something similar, like communicating in a way that encourages others to communicate, or, you know, facilitates more communication from other people as well.
And you mean specifically like, you know, being able to communicate up so that you can model that that's something that's okay to do, that kind of thing?
Yeah, and just to encourage that you are looking for ideas from other people as well. It's not your way or no way.
Right. Great. All right. So I'm seeing good. Some other things, communicating new changes with management. All right. Any other skills anybody's got on their mind?
How to communicate, I guess, encourage when people have so many things on their plate, or not knowing where to start. Yeah.
So are you thinking of something specific
Oh
that you're okay sharing?
yeah. Well, hey Bev, we're thinking of grants. Just kidding. Yeah, grants and how to reopen, and still we were, if I felt like we were getting going with new programming, and so then now it's a complete, you know, redirection, but we're still wanting to bring that stuff in. So how to communicate for staff who feels overwhelmed.
Okay, so that's a little bit different than from communicating up. So are you talking about wanting to be able to communicate with the state library about some of the needs you have to roll with these changes, or you're more specifically talking about just how to help your staff change?
How to help staff and or directors with moving forward, I guess, and not being in a standstill mode.
Okay. Okay, great. All right, and of course,
So,
go ahead.
So one that I would have would be how to like communicate and like get my idea or my point across without letting my emotions become too involved.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. Excellent. Hopefully we'll get at those things, and if we don't, or just ask me later, say, hey, what about this? Or yeah, we'll figure it out along the way. All right, so I'm going to kind of jump in. Again, you'll be doing stuff, so, you know, hang on tight. Here we go. All right, so I'm hoping everyone can see my screen, so if you can't, someone's got to let me know. So the question is, what's the difference between sharing an idea with a peer and communicating up to your boss? All right, so what's the difference? And again, I'm going to do this as if we're in a training room together, so the job here is to speak up. We won't rely on chat. We're a small enough group, I think we can actually talk to each other. So what's the difference between sharing an idea with a peer and communicating up to your boss? And whatever you think, it's the right answer.
So I know one difference between like a peer and a boss is my peers will hear me out and they don't necessarily need the play-by-play solution, but a boss wants to not only hear your idea, at least for me, wants to hear the idea and what my solution would be, how we would accomplish it as well.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Somebody else, what's the difference?
Generally, the amount of time between when I have an idea and when I share it with a peer is much shorter than when I'd share it with a boss, because it's like, I feel like, kind of as Robert answered, like I need more time to have the full, complete, like almost finished idea is
Mhm.
the thing.
Okay, good, good, thank you. Yeah, one more, somebody else?
Can be more intimidating to talk to a boss.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna keep going. This is kind of our thank you, warm up, good comments. And the next question I have is, what's the difference between sharing an idea with someone that you supervise, right, versus communicating up to your boss? So the previous question was about someone who's your peer, and this question is about, for those of you who do supervise somebody, what's the difference when you're sharing an idea with someone you supervise versus your boss?
When
For
I,
me,
oh,
go ahead.
no,
Okay. For me, when I'm sharing an idea with someone I supervise, I'm trying to get them to buy into the idea of what I'm trying to implement or do, or to work together as a team, versus when I'm communicating with my boss, it's kind of like we're trying to figure it out together, maybe not with an employee, it's like the idea is already there, so now it's time to implement it. With a boss, it's like you're working together to figure out how it's going to work.
Okay. Okay. Good. Somebody else? Thank you.
I agree with Rudy. And to add to that, I would say when I'm sharing an idea with somebody I supervise, I'm also trying to do a check-in of if it feels doable to them, if it's adding to their burden, like it is buy-in, but also like checking in with them because it's my job to take care of them. Whereas with my supervisor, I want them to have the buy-in, but it's their responsibility to like check in on me.
Okay. Good. Thank you. And is there one more? We'll go for 3 each time.
Maybe I'll weigh in a little bit
Yeah.
here, just as far as maybe from my perspective, as far as the communication. I mean, I totally agree with like what Robbie was saying about, or common solutions, things like that. But at the same time, I really do think it's important to just be consistent, whether you're talking to your peer, your supervisor, you're trying to communicate up, is always be the same person, be the same messenger, because I see it, I've seen it a lot that people will be, they'll talk to some people one way, but when they come and talk to me, they're completely different. And so when people are saying, well, or I'm getting this, this triangulated message about, these 2 people are saying this, and then say, well, what do you think about it? I said, well, this is what I heard when they talked to me about this, but it could be something very different. So if nothing else, try to be consistent, when you're talking to whoever it is, and because if you're not, I think you're going to get found out pretty quickly, and it's probably not going to really help your cause.
Right. So certainly this is one of the things that makes, this whole communicating up thing tricky, is that we feel differently about our boss versus our peers versus somebody we supervise. Like we come to those situations very differently just because of our preconceived ideas of what our roles are. And again, I appreciate Robert's comment, which is we probably want to be more consistent about how we deal with all of those people, as opposed to always being so hyper conscious of the status issues and changing the message depending on who you talk to. I mean, on one hand, I'd say you do sometimes need to change the message. So it's not that it would be exactly the same, but it might be more similar than you're thinking it should be. Okay, so let's pretend that you're trying to have a conversation about getting rid of a large reference desk, right? And the conversation might start something like this. Let's get rid of that big reference desk and only have roving staff. They do it in Australia and it works great. So I'm assuming you can imagine that that's how this conversation might start. And now I want you to imagine you're the manager and you've heard from a staff member some comment like that. How would you feel about this statement if you were the manager? Right? And again, this is really looking for interaction here. So how would you feel if you were the manager and one of your employees said, hey, let's get rid of the desk and only have roving staff. They do it in Australia. I'm hoping someone will unmute themselves and talk.
I think I would just want more information. I would want to know why they thought that would be a good idea for our branch.
Okay, good. Somebody
It would
else?
make-
You're
Yeah, it would make me think that maybe there's an issue that isn't being solved currently, and that this is their solution. So I'd want to understand, again, I guess the why, and also why they feel so strongly that that would work.
okay, great. One more?
I would feel glad that they were comfortable enough to bring up their issues with me, and it, like the other said, I would want to look into it more and see why, but I would feel glad that we have that openness.
Yeah, okay, cool. And that's all because you would be fabulous managers and fabulous leaders and not just blow somebody off. I'm going to say those are all very generous responses and much appreciated. Okay, so what if we were all robots? And here's how a conversation like this might go between robots. So now we've got Hal from 2001 Space Odyssey. I think we should get rid of the large reference desk. And now we've got Sonny, his boss. Does it match our mission? Does it improve service to customers? Is it better for staff? Does the cost benefit ratio work? Do we have the money, staff, resources we need to implement? And Hal says, yes. And Sonny says, then do it. All right, so what a ridiculous conversation. But on some level, if we are talking about wanting to make changes and they make sense, this is kind of the, it's not the equation, but it's kind of the checklist that, you know, ideally somebody would look at. Does this idea or suggestion match our mission? Does it improve service to customers? Is it better for staff in some way, right? Is there some cost benefit ratio that makes sense, right? And then of course, do we have the money, staff, resources, and maybe I should have added time to that to implement the thing, right? And if we were all being data-driven and unemotional, you know, not personal, we don't consider that in conversation there's a winner and a loser, then we could actually have this kind of conversation, right? So I kind of do it as a joke, but there's part of me that says, I wish we could have more of these kinds of conversations. Okay. So my question is, what makes it hard to communicate up? And this is another one where I'm actually looking for responses. And this time I am going to ask you to write in the chat box, because ideally we'll get an answer from everybody, is what makes communicating up hard for you? So I'm going to ask you to think of your very kind of specific personal situation that you're in, you know, and what is making it hard, not just generally communicating up, but what's making it hard right now. And I'll look for those answers in the chat box. Okay, so I'm seeing lack of trust. Make some notes. So trust is certainly a big issue. What else do we have there? Uncertainty about whether the conversation will go well or not. I'm assuming that's what that means. Okay, it can be intimidating. Okay, there's staff that want to control everything. Yeah, and it's kind of tricky because sometimes you don't know if you have all the information you need. So then I'm going to say, do I have all the info I need? Okay, yeah, and Rudy's comment there, like there's a lot of changes that need to be made to provide services during this COVID-19, but nobody actually knows what the answer is. So there really isn't kind of an expertise. It's just all a whole bunch of ideas, which in the best possible case would make it sort of fun, if you can allow me that word right now, but you know, sort of interesting, in that everybody's input is equally valued because nobody actually has the expertise to know exactly what to do. So if you can get people to adopt that attitude and listen to each other and recognize nobody actually knows, then that could actually be great. Okay, and I see that about unknowns make it hard. Unknowns. about goals. All right, most excellent. Okay, so hopefully we'll be addressing those things as we go along. And once again, if they don't feel like they get addressed to your satisfaction, I'm going to count on you guys to ask for what you need. Okay. When we were all together with Ray, one of the things he said in the training that I wrote down, conflict is a reaction to a perceived threat to self-worth. Use your nonverbals carefully to convey that your idea is not a status attack. Okay, and you'll notice kind of jokingly, that's not a problem for the robots, right? The robots, they're not worried about status attacks. But when we're dealing with humans and bosses and supervisees and supervisors, we have a lot of kind of status issues to be aware of. So one of the exercises that I like to do, and I'm going to actually ask you to do it, it's be slightly chaotic, but what I want you to do, in the ideal world, you would get up from your chair and walk around the room where you can still hear me, and you would walk around the room, and I want you to greet me, and we probably actually did this exercise when we were in person, but I want to do it just real quickly. So I want you to, as soon as I say now, the idea is that you would greet me like and let's start this, greet me like I'm a 6-year-old, and go everybody at the same time. You could just, whatever you would say to me if you were just meeting me on the street and I'm a 6-year-old. So now. I know it's weird. We're all sitting alone in the room, but if you can try it. Like, oh, I haven't seen you in such a long time. How would that go?
Hi, it's so nice
I
to
think
see
just like
you.
hi, Cheryl.
Hi. All right, see, the idea was if everyone does it at the same time, it won't seem so weird because no one will be able to hear each other. That was the idea. All right, so now if you're walking around the room, I'd have you stop. And this time I want you to greet me like I'm somebody you're intimidated by at work. Right? So how would you talk? What would your body do? How would you talk to me? So let's say, actually, I'll do it. I'm not shy. If you can still see me. So if I was going to meet, oops, I'm going to have to do this. If I was going to meet a 6-year-old, I would stoop down and I would have a big smile and I'd say, oh, how you doing? You know, hey, Janie, I haven't seen you for such a long time, right? And I'd do all this open body language and be super friendly, right? And then now I'm going to walk around and I'm coming back and now I'm someone you're intimidated. I'm intimidated by you. And now I'm probably turning sideways and maybe I'm crossing my arms and I'm probably looking a little bit dour, right? Because I'm not happy about this interaction, right? Okay, and if I walk around again and I come back and I say, now you're talking to an irate patron, your body language, you would do different things with your body, with your voice, the way you held yourself, all these kinds of things. So what I just want you to be aware of, and Ray was trying to help us out with, that when you're in a situation where you're uncomfortable, there's a lot of nonverbal things that happen that sort of betray how you're really feeling about the situation. And again, going back to Robert's comment about kind of treating each of these situations, I think of it as, I'm an adult, you're an adult. You may be my boss, you may be my peer, you may be somebody I supervise. Either way, we should all be treating each other like adults. Okay, so just to recognize that when we talk about what's hard about communicating up, it's often like there's a lot of unknowns. I'm not sure how people will react. You know, I don't want to get in trouble. Maybe nobody will like it. Again, all reasonable things to feel, right? It's pretty universal, those things. On the other hand, when we feel those things, we show up in a certain way. Again, through our tone of voice, through our body language, through our level of confidence. So I just want you to think about that because that's something that's hard for us to do online, but it is important. So I don't want to kind of forget that that's a crucial thing to think about. Okay. So I like this, I'm paraphrasing from a book. We grow up with the expectation that someone is in charge when really this is an illusion. Your bosses probably also complain that they aren't in charge, okay? You can influence people when your desires are aligned with other people's and the organization's desires. If you work in concert with the priorities of the library, You should need to talk to other people about your ideas and get feedback to build support. Take the long view. Don't be secretive. So that's just part of this idea of how do you get stuff done when you don't have the status or the power, right? So just recognize that sometimes we think, we come to the boss and we say, hey, this is the problem, you solve it. And even though we don't always say that in words, sometimes we say that just in the way we present the problem, right? Hey, this is a problem, and then it ends up sounding like a complaint, and that's not a good thing, okay? So I've got some examples of things where maybe you might want to communicate up about. So let's say you want to do something like start a text reference service or charge for holds, or you need some consistent service to all, so you want to suggest a training, those kinds of things. All right, now, maybe the text reference service, somebody says something like, I think we should start a text reference service. I'm sick of feeling like the library is so far behind. So again, I'm going to ask again for some interaction here. What's wrong with this statement? What's wrong with somebody coming to their manager or their leader and saying something like this?
It's starting negatively, saying that we're already behind the curve.
Okay, great. Thank you. What else?
It might prompt people, instead of focusing on starting the text reference service, to defend why the library isn't far behind.
Right. Yeah, excellent. Yes. What else?
They don't have any option. They didn't come and bring options.
Right. Right. It's just saying, here's a problem. I have no idea what to do about it. You fix it. So, right, even though that might not be what you mean when you say this kind of thing, if I'm a very busy person, that's probably how I'm going to receive that, right? So what else might be wrong with this or not good about this statement?
It just seems confrontational almost.
Okay, yeah, seems kind of confrontational. Yep, so choice of language matters. I'm sick of feeling that's not probably not the kind of thing you want to say to your boss.
From a communication standpoint, the should is what stands out to me. The word usage of should is putting yourself in a power position where you're telling someone else, what they should do.
Right, great, excellent, excellent.
I also like the phrase I'm sick of means like there have been these long brooding feelings, and why didn't you just speak up sooner if you think the library is falling behind in a constructive way before now?
Right, yes, great, excellent. Excellent. Anybody else have a thought about what's wrong with this?
No one's talking about needs. We don't know that the library needs a text reference service. We just know that somebody's pissed off because the library is far behind. So it's not addressing a problem.
Right, right. And I mean, it might be kind of silly, but how many people think this kind of statement is familiar, either to something they've, they've done in the past or seen other people do? And I think I can ask, and I might ask for someone to help me with the yes or no. The yes or no thing.
It's on the bottom of, if you open your participants box.
Yeah.
And you look there, you can vote yes, no, you can raise your hand.
Okay, yeah, can you guys, so how many of you is that kind of a familiar scenario, what we were just talking about? And I'm seeing some, good.
Okay. It's okay to vote no, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's, again, if that's not, if you're seeing something different, you're lucky. All right, excellent. All right, I'm going to go ahead and clear that, and I'm going to keep going. So we've got some more of these to play with, and your analysis was just amazing. So let's keep it up. So what's wrong when somebody says something like, those patrons who don't pick up their holds are creating more work for us? So what's the problem with that statement? And again, you can just speak up.
It is the truth, but it does create, just a negative connotation when the patrons do come in. You're just starting off on a negative foot with those patrons, going in with a negative attitude. Plus, when I have my department aides come to me and they complain about the patron who always has 150 holds on the hold shelf or things like that, I'm like, it's job security. If the books aren't there, then you don't have anything to do. So let's look at the positive side. So.
Okay, good. Yeah, good. Thank you. What else?
It kind of creates an us versus the patrons type vibe when we're supposed to be us with the patrons and community.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. What else?
That's really negative, and then they didn't offer any suggestions again. It's just kind of complaining for no reason.
Right. I'm honestly, for this one, I'm specifically bothered by this. They're creating more work for us. So if you are telling your boss, you know, that doing something for customers, I don't like it because it's making work for me, that's probably not, yeah, Bev, I like, that's probably not a good message, right? I mean, you're there to serve the customers. So as much as we might all agree that this is true, we've got to figure out a way to communicate this that's productive, right? Or somehow constructive, somehow is a way that it frames it so that it's actually, you know, again, that whole thing, does it meet the mission? Is it better for customers? Does it help staff? Does it have a good return on your sort of effort or investment? Yeah, is it customer centric? Like, you got to look at it that way, right? So you would reframe. So we're going to practice reframing some of these in a minute. But right now, I just want you to do what you're doing, which is great. Just kind of like, what the heck is wrong with this? All right, here's another one. Our staff are rude to customers. We need more customer service training. So what might not be great about this as a statement, whether it's true or not?
It feels like it's blaming all the other staff, but not themselves. Because I would assume that they're part of it as well.
Good. Yeah. What else?
It's generalizing instead of saying, hey, we have a problem with some of the staff members. It's saying all of our staff are just terrible.
Right. Right. I mean, almost always when you make a statement, and this would, you know, just good communication, when you make a statement like, you know, everybody or we all or whatever, as you just said, it becomes sort of not believable, right? It's just like, that's what you say in frustration, but that's not what you say when you're making a constructive suggestion. Okay, good. What else?
What about, like, it kind of goes along with, it's a general statement as opposed to giving specific ideas of what makes it bad customer service, because maybe it's just a habit nobody realizes considered, you know, bad customer service. Like, yeah.
Right. Right. And the truth is, this is kind of an interesting one again to me with, you know, sort of my profession and what I do, is if staff are rude to customers, do you need more customer service training, or do you need clearer policies about what people should be expected to do? I mean, and they might go hand in hand, and it might be both, but it's kind of this interesting thing, like, do you have some level, some kind of service level or agreements about how to behave? You know, just going off to training, again, I love, you know, I do a lot of customer service training, so I have in my life, so I do think it's valuable, but if you don't have some kind of way to enforce it and kind of agreements among different people, then just sending somebody to training or deciding on training might not be the right resolution to this. In fact, I have a client, and I'm doing some work for my local county. I live in Sonoma County, and we started with having a meeting about customer service training. And when I talked to them, what it turned out was they wanted kind of service standards, which is different from customer service training. And then, but people have those things mixed up in their mind. Like, is it so for instance, maybe you have a customer service standard that says, you know, we'll get to people, we'll return people's phone calls within 2 hours. That would be a standard. So you could say we have lousy customer service because we didn't call somebody back immediately within 5 minutes. Well, if your standard is 2 hours, and as long as you do it within 2 hours, it's good customer service because you've agreed that that's a standard. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. So sometimes it's that my level of service and your level of service are not the same. So you look at me like I'm doing bad service, and I think I'm doing my job. Right. So anyway, those are some of the Anyway, you probably get the deal. For now, I just want to try to kind of get you thinking about, it's so easy to say things like this and say it to somebody and think that we are relaying the correct information. But the truth is, these are not the kinds of statements that are going to probably get you very far. Okay. All right. So another one. Sorry. No. Next one. So you've got a merged reference and circulation desk, and the circulation staff are saying things like, those librarians need training on circulation. They aren't doing it right. Right? Anybody got that happening? And then the librarians say things like, the circ staff are overstepping their boundaries. We need to create clearer policies. Yeah, anybody heard that? Okay. So what's wrong with these?
So this is something we're actually dealing with right now while trying to figure out our curbside. We have a lot of back and forth between reference and circ and who should do what and why circ can't answer the phones all of a sudden. And we are just trying to, talk it out and figure it out, but we've actually had to get our director involved. And so what's wrong with it is that it's undermining, it's undermining us, and it's making both groups feel like the other group doesn't know, it seems like the other group doesn't know how to do their job. So.
Right. Definitely not a team approach.
No.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. What else? What else might be wrong with this approach?
It's another us versus them.
Right.
It's needing to walk in each other's shoes.
Okay. Good. What else?
It's just not customer focused. It's not focused on outcomes. It's just focused on process.
Right. So, if people are saying things like this, they're being very kind of egocentric, not sort of either customer centric or kind of organization centric or mission driven. Right. So lots of times we're trying to communicate something and it comes out so much from our point of view that to your manager, it looks like you haven't really thought about it. You're just asking something for yourself or something you're frustrated by. So again, this whole idea about making it mission driven, customer centric, team oriented, all that kind of stuff. All right. Probably we've got this, but this is the last one. So I'm going to go ahead and do it also. I think we should go to an open source ILS like Koha and stop paying so much to those vendors. So again, I agree with most of these statements, by the way, but this just is not a good way to communicate them. So what's wrong with this one? Or do you think it's perfect?
It's kind of out of the blue. It would need some facts to back it up to, okay, get more information.
Okay. Yep, for sure. What else?
I feel like it also doesn't consider maybe some of the other expenses or consequences that would come from implementing it. It may be cheaper in some regards, but more expensive in others.
Sure, right. Definitely requires more information. Yeah. Yeah. What else?
I feel like if it were framed as a question of like, it seems like we're paying a lot for vendors, is an option like Koha available? Would like, it's the same exact message, but like framing it as a question, trying to get information, not pushing an idea.
Right, right. And that's, again, great. Wonderful comments. You guys are rocking it. All right. If I was in the room with you guys, I would be seeing faces and, might notice that people are like, yeah, whatever, Cheryl, or this is interesting, or this isn't interesting. So can you just give me a little yes, no, like, are we on the right track here for what you're hoping for before I go too much further? And again, no is always a fine answer, and especially if you can help me understand.
Yes, because actually everything you just mentioned has been said at the library I work at, so it's perfect.
Okay. Good. Okay. All right. Again, so I'm counting on you guys for ask what you need and direct this where you need it to go. Okay. Hopefully I'm already going there, but if I'm not, okay. So there are status issues involved with convincing and influencing people, okay? So convincing and influencing, especially with your boss, is in large part a status situation, okay? If you can allow them to keep their status and accept your idea, it's more likely to happen. Okay, so again, going back to the robots, I wish there was a little bit more robotic behavior in these kinds of situations, but generally there's not. So when we're talking status issues and someone's your boss and you feel like you're an underling, if you will, or you don't have the power, we have to know who it is we're talking to and how much they are worried about their status. So when you guys were responding and I asked you, like, what if you were the manager, how would you respond to this statement? When I gave the first statement about moving the reference desk, you were all very generous and said, well, I would try to understand what they were, you know, thinking or why they wanted to do it. But the truth is, lots of times people in leadership positions, because you're busy and you don't, you know, this thing comes out of the blue and it doesn't make any sense. It's too easy to just, it's easy to sort of blow it off. Or feel like if I'm an insecure leader, then I might feel like, why are you challenging my authority? Or, you know, are you trying to make me look bad? Are you telling me I'm not taking care of my staff at the library? So again, if I'm that kind of personality, you really have to be actually pretty careful about the way you bring things up and bring suggestions. And Amanda, your comment about how do we turn that into a question, you know, that's really good. Which is, you know, it's fine to bring stuff up and then you say, you know, can we talk about some ideas about how to do this, you know, or do you have any ideas? Or, you know, there might be some way. So I think of it as I'm trying to help preserve their status. Now, again, I hope that you have leaders where that maybe you don't have to do that, or at least do that a lot. You probably have to do it a little with almost everybody. And again, if that doesn't make sense, somebody's got to ask. But I think, you know, we want to be careful because it is often perceived as a status situation when you don't have the power and you are making a suggestion. So you always have to be aware of those issues. All right. So we definitely don't want to sound like we're complaining, right? And if you can, again, to Amanda's point, you want to reframe the complaints and here's some language. How do we, you know, offer? How might we? How do we? How can we? And those are kinds of questions where you are allowing that other person to kind of have the status and you're trying to approach it like we're going to work together on this, right? How can we? How might we? How do we? Those kinds of things. So, I wanted to do a little bit of practice reframing, and because I think it would be great for everybody to do the practice, I'm going to actually ask you to just write this down on your own in your own space. You don't need to share it necessarily. So how can you frame, we can't do more programs without more staff? And again, this isn't rocket science. It can be fairly simple, right? So practice reframing the statement, we can't do more programs without more staff. And I'm super tempted to call on somebody, which I would never do if I was in a room, but is there somebody who hasn't been speaking up much who's willing to share? How did you, what did you reframe, how did you reframe that? Anyone? You'll have to, if anybody's trying to talk, you got to unmute yourself. I'm tempted to unmute all of you, but I don't think I have that power. Oh, I can. Okay.
I'll speak up. We're going through this.
Okay.
And so I just reworded it as it would be a big challenge to do more programs without adding more staff. How would we be able to rearrange to move forward or to choose some programs that we can do?
Okay. Okay. And if I can make a comment about that, I love what you just did, and I'm going to probably ask you to read it again because I think there's two parts to it. So could you go ahead and read it again? And again, I'm going to encourage everyone to listen and see, like, how does this play with you? If this is what somebody said to you, which parts of that work and which parts of it might we want to change? And maybe it all works. So Jane, would you do it again? Can you read it again?
Yeah. It would be a big challenge to do more programs without adding more staff. How can we rearrange or I didn't write the last part down, but how could we rearrange or choose which programs we can do?
Right. So sometimes when we do those statements, the second part presumes an answer to the first part. Does that make sense? So we're stating a problem, and then you've kind of given a partial solution. So one thing to be aware of is if you see the problem and you can state the problem or challenge clearly, sometimes it's, if you have a solution that you think is a good solution, you might go ahead and state it. You know, I'm wondering if we can try X, right? But if you just see the problem and you want an open conversation about possible solutions, then you don't want to suggest a solution because that starts limiting people's thinking. Right? Again, this is where if I was in the room, I'd be looking to see if you're,
I'm nodding.
What's that?
I'm nodding up and down.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
that makes sense.
It's an important point, right?
Yeah.
Which is, you always want to be aware of which of those you're doing. As soon as you start limiting it, and maybe you try to say something like, I think we should, you know, make everybody take 2 more hours off the reference desk or close the reference desk so that we can have them available. And then what happens is people argue that you shouldn't take them off the reference desk, that we can't do that. And now your idea goes flat, right? So if you presume a solution, then someone ends up arguing about that one single solution instead of opening up to how might we solve this problem.
That's exactly what's happened.
Awesome. Well, awesome that we're talking about it. I don't mean awesome that that happened. Okay, so this is it might seem small, but it's actually a super big point, and especially depending on who it is you're trying to communicate with. And Robert, I don't know if you're still there. I understand you might need to leave for a while, but if you've got before you go have a comment about any of this, I'm sure that you have some wisdom to share. Are you still there? Probably not still there. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. I knew
No,
that.
sorry. I am still here. So.
Okay. Okay. I was just wondering if you had any comments about that thing we were talking about, where sometimes, you know, we suggest a challenge and then we suggest a solution and then people argue about the solution and then we forget to deal with what the initial challenge was because people are just arguing about somebody's solution.
Yeah, I mean, I've always found that a lot of times it's not even the solution or the process, it's just a matter of personalities at some point as well. And that's really where the underlying, I guess, disagreement is happening, is because people just don't basically like each other, or they just need their voice to be heard. And so, you know, how you get around it is, I think a lot of it is just, you know, how you present yourself. And I think, you know, just going back to what like Ray was talking about, like your communication style and your color and things like that, and being, you know, that's really when I think it's important to be able to recognize, you know, who you're talking to. And again, not so much what the issue is that you're talking about, but, you know, how you present whatever it is you're going to be talking to them about, because it should probably be different. You know, if you're talking to me, if you're talking to Cheryl, or, you know, you're talking to Amanda, you're 3 different people and maybe 3 different types of approaches that you might need to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so did someone else have another reframe of that they could share? Thanks to Jane for sharing that. Janie, we can't do more programs without more staff. So who's got a reframe of that?
So what about, to be able to complete all planned programming, how much staff do you think we will need?
Good. Actually, so what do people think about that? you want to, will you go ahead and read it again so we can,
So, to be able to complete all planned programming, how much staff do you think we will need?
okay, anyone comment about that?
It wouldn't go over well, I think, with some managers.
And why do you think that?
I don't think there's anything wrong with like the statement because it is right, like a question trying to get more information.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's so hard with tone with that one because it's like, how much do you think we need if you're the expert? And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, I don't
So
know.
there-
I agree it's a good statement of like genuinely, what is your perception of this issue? But like, I just know some managers it would not go over well with.
Right. So this is where this whole idea of it's you got to be super careful how you do that, and your choice of words and your tone of voice actually matter. So again, it's a good. I like where you've started, and you'd want to probably massage it a little bit to figure out how can I get this. And again, this is why this idea of practicing, because when you write it, you think, yeah, that's the right thing, and then you say it, and it's like, you know what, that could be perceived as very passive aggressive. Again, depending on who you are, depending on who you're talking to, depending on your relationship. So you just want to be aware, like, oh, okay, maybe, one thing is in these status situations, if you can be misperceived, there's a chance you will be. So, you want to be really, really careful with the way you frame those comments or questions. Okay. So again, thank you. That's great. And I believe you could say that as long as your tone and your body language and it was the right person. It's not that that's wrong or bad. It's just that you'd have to deliver that carefully, right? All right. How about one more? We can't do more programs without more staff. What's one more reframe?
I was thinking of it like, would it be possible to get more staff in order to provide more programs? Something like that.
Okay. And again, the danger a little bit is it can feel a little bit passive aggressive. So again, you got to watch. We want to watch out for things like that. All right. Hi, bye, Darnisa. I see in the chat that you're saying you got to head out. Sorry. Nice to see you.
Hi, good to see you too.
All right. Bye. So how about if we go ahead to the next one? The library can't ever hope to be visible in this community. Nobody cares about us. So assuming that you felt that way, like when I look at these three statements that I'm, having us play with, it sounds like somebody's kind of frustrated, right? Like we can't do more programs. We can't cope with the needs of this rapidly growing population of English language learners. We can't ever hope to be visible, right? So the come from is like, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I want somebody to solve my problem. But if we're going to communicate up, we got to do it a very different way. Okay. So I'll tell you what, pick whichever one of those two interests you and work on it. And I'm going to like set my timer for 2 minutes. Okay. And then I'm going to ask everybody to read whichever one they did. Okay. So this is like we're going around the room and everybody's going to say what their answer to this is. All right. So pick one of either the library can't ever hope to be visible or the we can't cope with the needs of the rapidly growing population of English language learners. Pick one of those, write down your reframe, and then we'll go around and have everybody read theirs. And I'm going to set my timer for 2 minutes. Okay, 10-second warning. All right. So does someone want to start us off?
I can start.
Great, thanks, Devin.
I said, I'm excited to increase the visibility of the library in our community. Could we brainstorm a few ways to get started?
Lovely. Lovely. Thank you. All right, another one.
Mine was kind of along the same lines. I just said, what do you think we can do to make ourselves more visible in the community?
Okay, great. Thank you, Camille. Yeah. Who else?
I can go. Mine, I did, what changes can we make to meet the rapidly growing population of English language learners that we serve in our community?
Okay, great.
Mine's on the longer side, but I did. It seems that our attendance has recently declined overall. Have you noticed this too? And if so, do you think there's anything that we can do to become more relevant in the community again?
Okay, nice. Nice.
I did. It's difficult to see how impactful we can be with the community when we don't have feedback on public perception of the library.
Okay. And again, Jane, watch out that you want to, there's probably needs to be another statement of that's a little bit like I'm telling you the problem, but I don't have any idea and I want you to solve it for me. And I'm pretty sure that's not what you mean, but depending on who's hearing you, right? You get it?
Yeah, and then the next part would be, hey, let's have some outreach for public perception. And yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you just wouldn't want to, you wouldn't want to stop there before. So it doesn't feel like you're expecting me to solve the problem. Like that's the thing we're trying to avoid, right?
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Thank you. Someone else. Javier?
Oh yeah, mine kind of like the similar to the other ones I wrote. How can we make ourselves more visible or appealing to the community that are not regular library users, or to members of the community who are not regular library users?
Okay, great, great. How about Karina? I'm just going to go ahead and use your names.
Yeah, I said library programs and services are not attracting members of this community. We should reach out to hear what they would like to see from us.
Okay, good. And I can't remember now who made the comment, if it was about should, to watch out for the word should, which is again, status-wise is saying, I'm telling you, you should do this. So now we kind of pulling in some of these status issues that we want to try to avoid, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Great. How about Rudy?
I just kind of cheated. I don't know if this is right, but I just said, how can we cope with the needs of the rapidly growing population of English language learners?
Yeah, that's okay. It's not cheating. It's good. It's good. You use what you have. That's awesome. I love it. Great improviser. How about Fernanda?
I wrote, it seems that the population of English language learners is growing rapidly. How can we work together to address their needs?
Okay. Yeah, very nice. Nicely said. Marisa?
I have, the needs of the English language learners in our community are growing. Is there a way we can focus on providing better service to them?
Okay. Yep. Great. And Michelle?
I have, how can we increase our visibility in the community when it seems that some people aren't engaging with us?
Okay, great. Awesome. Did I get everybody? I think I got everybody. Oh, actually, Christine or Bev, do you want to chime in?
Sure. I wrote, I love how our diverse community is utilizing the library more often. I would love to explore various ways how we can meet their needs.
Okay, okay, good. Right. That's always good to start out with this sort of like positive, like, hey, aren't we doing a good job? You know.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think without statistics, you don't know it's actually growing or if they're actually now using the library. So that's how I thought.
Right, right. And well, we'll address that next, actually. Bev, do you have something you want to share?
Sure. Well, I love that Christine started with I love, but you could say there are a lot of new English language learners in our library or in our community. How can we work together to find the needs of individuals, and how can we look at what we do offer and what we can offer and align it with what people say they need?
Right, great, great. And of course, you know, in the ideal world, you do your homework beforehand, so you know you have an even more kind of concise statement and reasoning. But we'll get there. That was great. Okay, I guess you got the idea, right? You don't want to sound like you're complaining. You don't want to sound like it's somebody else's job to solve the problem. If you can put it in a positive frame and make it community centric, mission driven, good return on investment, that kind of stuff, that's what we're looking at. Now, okay, so this next slide, I couldn't figure out where to put this in the whole kind of thing that we're doing today, but I feel like it's important. It's kind of related to this status stuff, and it's about how you think about power. So one of the reasons it can be uncomfortable and we feel like we need this set of skills to be able to communicate up is because we feel like we don't have power and they have the power, right? And if you can think about power a little bit differently, so one question is, do you think of power as finite or infinite, right? And you know, there's that whole thing, if they have it, then you don't. So whatever they call that, the zero-sum way to think about it. And the truth is, everybody can have more power. It doesn't have to be finite or infinite. You don't have to be taking power from somebody because you have a suggestion or you think they're not doing something correctly. So part of it is how we show up. So really at this point, I'm saying you want to make sure you're thinking about how do you think about power, right? And then do you have to win in the conversation, right? So if some of you were in the conflict little training we did, we talked about where you are in the dual concerns model, right? Whether you're a competitor or whether you're, I'm going to do collaborator with a big hug, you know, or whether you're an avoider or a competitor. Okay. So also, often when we're dealing with these situations, they feel so big that we think they're kind of make or break. So this last point there, most situations are not make or break in the moment, and yet we often act like they are. Right. So again, sometimes just like in a conflict, if you start a conversation, maybe about, you know, I've noticed more English language learners coming into the library, but you haven't done the research to actually know whether there's a real uptick in the community, you might decide to say, and somebody says, well, I don't think that's true. Then you, instead of continuing to say, yes, it's true, no, it's not, yes, it's true, no, it's not, you might decide to say, well, you know what, I've been seeing this, but let me ask some other people, right? And then you go and get the information you need instead of trying to push through, but I'm sure, because that's what I see. I'm in the room, I'd be looking for you nodding, but I'm hoping that makes sense. Because this is another one of those things that people do. If you feel like you have to win or you've got to be heard or whatever that is, sometimes we try to make all this stuff happen in that conversation, but you actually can't. So it becomes kind of a waste of time. And in fact, you start polarizing, and what you don't want is to polarize or create status issues or differences, right? So you'd be better off by saying, oh, you know, if you haven't noticed that, let me go back and talk to some other people and see, maybe it's just me. And if I do that, then I'm preserving the ability to come back with real information or real data, right? So don't push for stuff when if you haven't done your homework, right? Okay, so this comment here at the bottom is from this, I love this, it's from the CEO of the Girl Scouts, okay, or a former CEO. You always have power if you know where to find it. There's the power of inclusion, the power of language, the power of shared interests, and the power of coalition. Power is all around you to draw upon, but it's rarely raw and rarely visible. Okay, so what I love about this is to recognize that even when you're feeling powerless, you can sort of try to kind of understand that you actually do have some power, right? And to try to draw on that power. So power of language we've been talking about, you know, maybe you don't want to use the word should very often or always or never, or I'm so frustrated, that those things are not going to be good or make your argument powerful, right? The power of shared interests. So lots of times if you're trying to pitch an idea to somebody, you want to frame it around something you know is important to them. Whether this is your city or your county or your boss or, you know, the library director, whatever, if you know they care about something like, you know, EDI or saving money or, you know, going to some, you know, they like great new technology or they hate new technology, you would want to speak to them based on some kind of shared kind of beliefs or values. Okay. All right. So you are going to practice some more. Okay. So more of the second hour will be you practicing. And here we go. I'd like you to pick one of these that you feel like is, you know, something that you care about. You can change it a little bit based on something that you really need to advocate for. It doesn't have to be one, it doesn't even have to be one of these, but I need each of you to pick one that you're going to work on. Okay. So pick one of these. And I'm actually going to ask you to write down the one you pick because I need to change this slide and talk about something else. So pick one you want to work on, write it down. All right, so I'm assuming 10-second warning, I'm assuming you've all got it. All right, and I'm gonna go to a different slide because I want you, when you're doing this, to be thinking about these things when you are kind of trying to write your pitch to advocate for this thing. So ideally, you should, if you want to build the trust and respect that allows you to communicate up effectively, these are kind of, this is my little checklist sort of. So one, you should be planning how to share your idea. So the stuff we were working on earlier, it's like that kind of blurt thing, like, I'm so sick of us being behind. We need to start a text reference service, or, you know, we need to FaceTime our customers, or whatever that is. So you really should want to plan, okay? You really need to know why this idea is important and express it as a benefit, okay? Not how something will function. Oops, sorry about that. Eeks. Wait. You don't just want to say, you know, I want to have 3 people on the desk and 2 of them will come in on Thursdays and 1 on Friday, and then we'll, right? So getting into the minutia isn't usually what people need. Sorry, misspelling here. They need to know how something will benefit the staff, the customers, and the community, right? So when you're sharing an idea, you got to make sure that you understand and express the benefits, okay? Right. And so there's ways that you would want to do your homework. So this is part of your planning, right? Who else is doing it, okay? Is anybody else doing it? Will data or examples help? And I'm going to say generally yes. If it's something data driven or something, an example, super helpful, saves a lot of time, okay? Is there an expert to point to, right? Is there somebody who really, you know, everybody respects as the knowledgeable person that you should be pointing to, okay? And then once you've done your homework and you've got a plan, you also have the work of keeping it kind of short, specific. I should have added concise. I'm going to do it because I can, right? Concise. And in all of that, you should be relating your kind of comments or your advocacy towards the mission of the library and being customer centric or community centric. Okay. And then the comment is, don't expect the leaders to solve the problem or implement the idea for you. It's kind of your job to do the planning, the homework, and frame your idea or suggestion in a way that will be kind of easily accepted while you aren't, you know, why no one's feeling a status attack and everybody's feeling like we're working together. Okay, so it's a lot to do. All right, so your job is to take that thing, that whatever slide idea. Sorry, let me move the slide back now. Okay, whichever one you picked. And I want you to kind of write out a whole pitch. Like, how would you approach this? And then we're going to get into breakout rooms where you'll get to practice your pitch to another person and get a little feedback. Okay, so that's where we're going. So I'm going to give you 4 minutes now to sit and write your pitch. Okay, and that will start now. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, so this slide's going to go away. If you need to take a note about it, I'll leave it there for 30 more seconds. Okay. So if you guys, could you, I'm hoping I'll be able to see it. Could you give me a yes or no about whether you feel you're ready? You got something written down, then you can practice on the participants list. All right. All right, so Devin and Jane, maybe I'll try to put you guys together. I don't think I can. All right. Exchange. Oh boy, that's going to be too complicated for me. Okay. All right. Well, probably you'll have to just go with it because I think, well, most folks are kind of ready. And again, whatever you do is great. This is all about practicing. All right. So what's going to happen is I'm going to open breakout rooms, and you should automatically be, I think, asked to join them. This is a little bit new to me, so hopefully it'll go smoothly. And Christine will help me, or Bev if you've got more experience. So I'm going to open all the rooms. You've been assigned to them, so you should be put in a room. You will have 6 minutes. In those 6 minutes, that basically gives you like 2 minutes each to kind of try to, which is plenty of time, is to share how you wanted to pitch your idea. Then let your partner give you a little bit of feedback, and then let your partner pitch their idea, and you'll give them a little bit of feedback. Now, when I'm talking about feedback, what I mean is if I'm listening to you, so say I'm the manager and you're kind of pitching something to me, I just want, the kind of feedback I might give was, you know, I'm not sure I completely understood what you were asking, but it sounded like a good idea. You know, like whatever it is, if you, if the tone of voice, I mean, it's going to be a little hard to see body language, but if tone of voice, if somebody used a should in there, you might say, I'm not sure about the should. So just give whatever feedback you can, but pretend you're the manager, someone who has the status, and how does this interaction feel? Okay, and here we go. I'm going to open the breakout rooms. I believe you'll get a 1 minute warning, and then the room will close, and you should all be pushed back into here. So when you leave the room, don't leave the whole meeting, just leave the room if you have that option. Here we go. I'm opening the rooms. So Christine, I think, there we go. Cool.